The first time I saw his wedding invitation, my stomach dropped so hard I thought I might be sick. It was cream paper, gold letters, expensive, perfect, and my ex-husband's name sat right there in the center, like he hadn't taken anything from me, like he hadn't left me in pieces, like he wasn't still living off what I built. I stood in my kitchen with the envelope open, staring at the words. My hands were shaking, but I wasn't crying. Not anymore. Because crying was what I did the first week after the divorce. Crying was what I did when I found out the truth. Crying was what I did when I realized I had been carrying a man who loved being carried. But this time I felt something else. Cold, calm heat. The invitation said they wanted peace and closure. It even had a little line at the bottom. Your presence would mean so much. My presence. At his wedding. I almost laughed. It came out as a tight sound in my throat, like my body didn't know whether to choke or scream. Because here was the part nobody at that wedding would understand. Even after the divorce, I was still supporting him. I was still paying for things that had his name on them. Still covering holes he made. Still cleaning up messes he left behind. Not because I loved him, no. That was long gone. I did it because I was tired. Because I wanted it to end. Because I didn't want my life tied up in court for years. And because he knew exactly how to sound helpless when it benefited him. But that morning, standing there with that invitation, I made a decision. I was done being his safety net. I canceled every last bit of support. Canceled the help. The money. Quiet rescue. The "I'll handle it" that I always gave without being asked twice. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I accepted the invitation. Not because I wanted to watch him smile. Not because I wanted to see her in a white dress. But because I knew something nobody in that room knew. I knew what he was hiding. I knew what his perfect new life was built on. And I knew exactly what I was going to say. Just one sentence. One sentence that would make the whole room go silent. One sentence that would shock everyone. Especially him. And as I slid the invitation back into the envelope, I whispered to myself, "Okay. Let's see how you stand without me." When people talk about divorce, they usually talk about love ending. But for me, the love ended way before the marriage did. I met him when I was younger and still believed hard work always got rewarded. He was charming in a soft way. Gentle voice, warm smile, the kind of man who looked like he'd never hurt anyone. He told me he wanted a simple life. A business of his own. A home full of laughter. Kids someday. And I believed him. First, it felt like we were a team. We had a tiny apartment, cheap furniture, and big dreams. I worked long hours. He bounced between ideas. He always had a plan. A plan that needed my help. Started small. Can you cover rent this month? Just until this client pays. Can you put the groceries on your card? I'll pay you back. Can you co-sign this? It'll be easier with your credit. Every time he asked, he had that look like it hurt him to ask. Like he hated needing me. Like he was grateful. And I wanted to be the kind of wife who believes in her husband. So I did it. I co-signed the loan for his first business idea. I helped him build a website. I answered customer emails at night while he slept. I tracked his spending because if I didn't, we would drown. When he failed, I didn't shame him. I comforted him. When he cried, I held him. When he promised, "I'll make this up to you," I nodded and said, "We'll be okay." Years passed like that. Became the steady one. The adult. The safety net. And he became comfortable. Not evil. Not cruel every day. Just comfortable. He liked the feeling of always having someone beneath him to catch him. And the saddest part. I didn't notice how tired I was until my body started showing it. I'd wake up with headaches. I'd snap over small things. I'd stare at the ceiling at night, doing math in my head, trying to figure out how to keep us afloat. Meanwhile, he kept telling people he was building something big. He loved being seen as the dreamer. He loved the praise. He loved the story. But he didn't love the work the way I did. And still, I stayed. Because marriage is supposed to mean something, right? Because I kept thinking maybe next year he'll finally change. Then one afternoon everything shifted. I was folding laundry when his phone buzzed on the counter. Normally I didn't check it. I wasn't that wife. But the screen lit up with a message preview, and the words were so bold, so careless, my hands froze in midair. It said, "I can't wait until she's fully out of the picture." I stared at that line like it was written in fire. Out of the picture. She meant me. And in that moment, I realized I wasn't his partner anymore. I was his obstacle. I didn't confront him right away. I wish I had. I wish I had exploded and thrown the phone at him and demanded the truth. But I didn't. I sat with it. I watched him for a week like I had never watched him before. And suddenly everything made sense. The late nights. The business meetings. The way he would turn his phone face down. The way he'd smile at his screen and then look up at me like I was nothing but a familiar piece of furniture. When I finally confronted him, he didn't deny it. That's what broke me the most. He didn't even fight for the lie. He sighed like I had caught him doing something mild, like eating cookies before dinner. And then he said the words I will never forget. "I didn't want to hurt you." As if cheating was something that happened to him. As if he was the victim of his own choices. I asked him how long. He shrugged. "A while." Asked him why. He said, "I don't know, it just happened." And then he tried to turn it on me. He said I was always stressed. Always tired. Always controlling the money. Always focused on bills and problems. He said, "You don't know how to relax." I looked at him with tears on my face and I thought, of course I don't. Because I've been relaxing for two people for years. The divorce was ugly in a quiet way. Not screaming. Not throwing things. Just endless cold conversations. Paperwork. Lawyers. People asking me, "Are you okay?" Like it was a normal question. I moved out first because I couldn't breathe in that house anymore. And here's the part that shocks people. Even after the divorce, I still carried pieces of his life. 'Cause my name was tied to things. Loans. Contracts. Accounts. During the marriage, it was our future. After the divorce, it was my responsibility. Because he was careless and I was afraid of what would happen if everything collapsed. He knew it too. He called me with that same helpless voice. "Hey, there's a payment due. I'm short. Hey, they're threatening late fees. Hey, can you just handle it like you always did?" At first I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I was doing it to protect my credit, my peace, my future. But week by week it became clear. He wasn't trying to stand. He was still leaning on me, just from a different address. And while I was paying to keep things stable, he was spending his money on his new life. Dinners. Trip. Fresh start things. He posted smiling photos online like he had been reborn. Like he hadn't left me with the wreckage. And then one day he said something that made my blood go cold. He said, "You're good at this stuff. You should keep handling it. It's not like it hurts you. Not like it hurts you." As if my time meant nothing. As if my stress was invisible. As if my support was just air. That was the moment I stopped seeing him as my ex. I started seeing him as what he truly was. A man who thought my help was an entitlement. And I realized something else too. If I didn't cut the cord now, he'd keep pulling until there was nothing left of me. So I made a plan. Quiet one. Clean one. And I promised myself I would never again rescue a man who wouldn't rescue himself. I didn't do it in a burst of anger. I did it like a surgeon. Low. Careful. Zach. First I printed everything. Every loan statement. Every shared contract. Every email. Every text where he asked for help. Every proof that I was still carrying weight that should not be mine. I met with a lawyer not to attack him, just to protect myself. I remember sitting in that office, hands clasped, trying to sound calm while my heart beat like a drum. The lawyer looked at my documents and said, "You're still supporting him." He nodded. "I know." He said, "Why?" And I didn't have a smart answer. I just said the truth. Because I wanted it to be over. The lawyer leaned forward. "It won't be over until you make it over." That sentence stayed with me. So I started making it over. I removed my name where I legally could. Closed shared cards. Changed passwords. I froze what needed freezing. I set written boundaries. And then I sent him one message, simple and clear. I will no longer cover anything for you after this date. I read it 10 times before sending. My finger hovered over the screen. Part of me expected guilt, fear. That old habit of thinking I was being mean. But then I thought about every night I stayed awake, every time I swallowed my pain, every time I helped him while he smiled at someone else. And I pressed send. His response came fast. So you're just going to ruin me? Ruin you? Like I was the villain for stopping. He called. He begged. Then he got angry. He said, "You can't do this. You owe me. You were the one who always said we're a team." I almost laughed again. A team. He had already quit the team. He just wanted the paycheck. Then he tried a softer approach. He said, "Look, I'm starting over. I'm building something new. Don't do this now." And that's when I understood something very clearly. He didn't want support because he needed it. He wanted it because it made his life easy. So I held my ground. And the more I held it, the more he panicked. He started showing up at places he knew I'd be. He sent long messages about how cold I was. He even tried to make me feel guilty by saying, "I thought you were a good person." Good person. As if goodness means being used forever. Then, like a final little knife twist, the wedding invitation arrived. It wasn't just an invite. It was a message. Said, "Look at me. I'm fine without you." But I could see the truth behind the gold letters. He wasn't fine. He was trying to prove he was fine. And he was doing it by putting on a show. A big, expensive show. So I started asking questions. How could he afford this wedding? Where was the money coming from? Because the math didn't make sense. And when the math doesn't make sense, there's always a reason. I didn't need to spy. I didn't need to hack anything. I just needed to look at what I already knew about him. He didn't pay bills unless someone forced him. He didn't save money unless someone reminded him. He didn't build stability. He borrowed it. And I had a feeling that wedding was still leaning on me in a way nobody could see. So I dug deeper. And what I found made my hands go cold all over again. 2 weeks before the wedding, I got a call from a number I didn't know. I almost ignored it. But something told me to answer. "Hi," a woman said politely. "I'm calling from the venue. We're confirming final payment." My stomach tightened. "I'm sorry, what?" She sounded confused. "Are you not handling the remaining balance? Your name is on the file." Name. On the wedding venue file. I swear my heart stopped for half a second. I said, "I'm not paying for anything. I'm his ex-wife." Silence. Then she cleared her throat. "The booking was made using an account connected to your name." I felt heat rush to my face. Not because I was embarrassed. Because I suddenly understood exactly what he had done. He had used the old business account that still had my name tied to it. The one I had been trying to untangle. The one he promised he would transfer soon. He had used my connection like a key. And the worst part. He did it because he assumed I would do what I always did. Fix it. Cover it. Quietly handle it so he didn't look bad. The woman on the phone said, "We need confirmation by end of day." I took a breath so deep it hurt. I said, "Remove my name from that file. Immediately. I do not authorize this." Her voice changed, more serious now. "Ma'am, if your name is tied to the payment method." "I'm telling you right now," I said, calm but sharp. "I'm not responsible for his wedding and I will not be paying a cent." When I hung up, my hands were trembling. Not from fear. From a strange kind of power. Because I finally saw the whole pattern clearly. He wasn't marrying her with money he earned. He was marrying her with money he expected me to cover. And suddenly the invitation made sense. It wasn't a peace offering. It was a trap. If I showed up and didn't say anything, the day would go on. He'd look like a king. Everyone would clap. The photos would be perfect. And later, if there were unpaid bills, he would call me like always. And he would say, I didn't mean for it to happen. But if I didn't show up, he could tell everyone, she's bitter. He could control the story either way. I took the story back. So I made my choice. I didn't call him to scream. I didn't warn him. I just kept moving. I sent my lawyer the venue information. I sent proof of my divorce. I sent proof that my name was being used without my clear agreement. Then I did something else. I stayed quiet. Because I knew if he sensed panic, he would try to twist it. And I didn't want a fight. I wanted a moment. A clean moment where the truth would land in front of everyone. Not as a long speech. Not as a messy scene. Just one sentence that would open a door nobody could close again. Pictured the room. The guest. The smiles. The music. The bride glowing. I pictured him standing there proud, acting like he built this new life all on his own. And I pictured the exact second the air would change. So I planned it like a film scene. I chose my outfit, simple, calm, nothing dramatic. I chose my timing, late enough that everyone would already be seated. And I practiced the sentence in my head over and over. Kept it short, kept it sharp, and I kept it true. Because revenge doesn't always need fire. Sometimes it just needs light. And I was about to turn on the brightest light he had ever seen. On the day of the wedding, I didn't feel nervous. That surprised me. I thought my hands would shake again. I thought my chest would tighten. I thought I would feel that old pain like a wave. But as I drove to the venue, I felt clear. Like I had already left that marriage twice. Once on paper. And once in my heart. The venue was beautiful, of course. Old doors. Soft lights. People laughing outside, holding drinks, taking photos. He had always loved appearances. I parked, sat in the car for a moment, and watched everyone through the windshield. Did they know? Did anyone know the truth about him? Or did they only know the version he sold? I walked in slowly. Heads turned. Course they did. The ex-wife always becomes a story before she becomes a person. I could feel whispers in the air like tiny needles. But I kept my face calm. I wasn't there to beg. I wasn't there to cry. I wasn't there to cause chaos. I was there to end something. Inside, the room was full. Warm music played. The bride's family sat near the front, smiling like this was a fairy tale. And then I saw him, my ex, standing near the stage, fixing his suit, laughing with his friends. He looked confident. That's what made it almost funny. Because I knew he was standing on thin ice. And he didn't even feel the crack yet. Then I saw her. The bride. She was beautiful in a polished way. Hair perfect. Dress perfect. Smile bright. She looked at me and her eyes narrowed just a little. Not fear. Not guilt. More like pride. Like she had won. And maybe she thought she had. Because she didn't know the truth either. She didn't know her new husband was still tied to his old life like a chain. She didn't know the wedding itself had tried to reach into my pocket. I found a seat on the side, close enough to be seen, far enough to be calm. The ceremony began. Words about love. Promises. Fresh starts. I listened like I was watching a movie I used to star in. Then the reception started. Love. Clinking glasses. And finally, the moment came. Someone tapped the microphone and said, "We have a surprise guest tonight." My ex's friends turned toward me. The bride's mother smiled politely, like she was being graceful. And then the host said, "She was an important part of his life, and we'd love to hear a few words." My ex's face changed. Just for a second. His smile froze like a mask glued too tight. Because he suddenly realized I wasn't there to be silent. He walked toward me fast, leaning down with that fake soft voice he used when he wanted control. He whispered, "Don't do this." I looked up at him and smiled a small, calm smile. And I whispered back, "You already did." He swallowed. His eyes searched my face like he was trying to guess what I knew. Then he stepped away because everyone was watching. The microphone was placed in front of me. My heart beat once, heavy and slow. Not panic, not pain. Just power. I stood up. The room went quiet in that strange way it does when people sense something real is about to happen. And I looked straight at him. Then I spoke. I didn't clear my throat. I didn't smile wide. I didn't make it a speech. I just held the microphone, looked at my ex, then looked at the bride and said one sentence. Calm, loud enough for every corner of the room. I hope you love him enough to pay his bills, because I won't anymore. That was it. One sentence. And for a second it didn't even feel real. Felt like time paused. The smiles on faces didn't fade slowly. They dropped, like someone shut off the music inside them. The bride's eyes widened, and her mouth opened just a little, like she didn't understand the language I had spoken. My ex went pale. Not embarrassed pale. Scared pale. Because he knew exactly what that sentence meant. It wasn't just about money. It was about the truth. It was about all the invisible help he had been living on. It was about the fake success he had been showing the world. And in that silence, I could almost hear people doing mental math. Pay his bills. Why would she be paying his bills? Someone laughed nervously like it was a joke. But it didn't land as a joke. It landed as a warning. Then the whispers started. Quiet at first, then spreading like smoke. I saw the groom's friend lean toward another friend, eyebrows raised. I saw the bride's mother turn to the venue staff near the back. And then, like the world was responding to the truth, a man in a black suit walked quickly toward the head table with a folder in his hand. He wasn't a guest. He was staff. And his face was not smiling. He leaned down and spoke to my ex in a low voice. My ex's jaw tightened. The staff member pointed toward the side hallway. My ex stood up too fast, chair scraping. The bride grabbed his arm, confused. What is it? He didn't answer her. He just tried to pull her along like he could drag the moment away from the room. But the room had already seen the crack. And once people see a crack, they start looking for the break. I didn't stay standing. I didn't demand attention. I simply placed the microphone back on the stand and sat down. My hands were steady. My chest felt light. Because I had finally done the thing I was afraid to do for years. I let him face the world without my cover. The bride stood up now, eyes moving around, trying to read the room. My ex returned a minute later, but his confidence was gone. His smile was gone. His whole body looked smaller. He leaned close to her, whispering fast. I watched her face change as he spoke. First confusion, then disbelief, then anger. Her cheeks flushed red. She pulled her arm away from him like he suddenly felt dirty. And then I saw it the moment she understood. 'Cause she looked at me. Not with pride anymore. Not with victory. But with a sharp question in her eyes, like her whole fairy tale had just turned into a cold hallway. Then my ex turned toward me, walking fast, trying to keep his voice low so nobody heard. What did you do? He hissed. I looked up at him calmly. And I said, nothing you didn't do first. He clenched his fists, then forced them open because he knew the room was watching. He tried one last time, one last attempt to twist me into the villain. He said, you're trying to ruin my life. I leaned back slightly and whispered, no, I'm just letting it be yours. His eyes filled with panic. Because he finally understood. He couldn't blame me for standing up. He could only blame himself for sitting on my shoulders for so long. And then the final piece of my plan arrived. My lawyer's email confirmation had already been sent to the venue. The staff member returned, now with another person. They spoke to my ex again. This time the bride heard it. And she stepped back like she had been slapped by truth. Because the venue wasn't fully paid. Not anymore. Not without me. And the show he built was starting to fall apart right in front of the audience. I didn't stay to watch the full collapse. That wasn't my goal. I didn't need to watch him beg or explain or scramble. I didn't need to watch her cry or rage. I didn't need to collect tears like trophies. My revenge wasn't about pain. It was about release. So I stood up quietly and walked out. As I moved toward the doors, people stared, but nobody stopped me. Because what do you say to someone who finally chose themselves? Outside, the air felt cold and clean. I took a breath and realized something strange. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't broken. Felt finished. Like a chapter had closed with a solid click. Later that night, my ex called me over and over. I didn't answer. He texted. "You embarrassed me." He texted again. "You did this on purpose." Then he tried a softer message. "Please. Just talk to me." I stared at that word, please, and I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. But then I remembered how many times I had said please. Please respect me. Please stop lying. Please stop using me. Please take responsibility. He never listened. So why should I listen now? In the weeks that followed, the truth came out in layers like peeling old paint. People learned he had been using accounts tied to my name. People learned he was behind on payments. People learned his success had been supported by the person he betrayed. And the funniest part, some people blamed me anyway. They said, "You should have handled it privately." I always smiled when I heard that. Because privately is how people keep being used. Privately is how strong people get trapped. Privately is how men like him stay comfortable while women like me carry everything. I didn't ruin his wedding. I simply stopped saving it. And there's a big difference. Eventually, everything that was tied to my name got cleaned up the right way. Took time. Took paperwork. Took patience. But it got done. And as it got done, something else happened inside me. I started sleeping again. I started eating without that tight knot in my stomach. I started laughing without forcing it. I felt like my life had space in it again. Not because he suffered, but because I finally stopped volunteering to suffer for him. Sometimes people ask me if I regret going to that wedding. If I regret saying that one sentence. I always tell them the truth. I regret the years I stayed quiet. I regret the nights I carried everything while he carried excuses. I regret the way I confused love with sacrifice. But that day I didn't regret. Because my sentence wasn't cruel. It was honest. And honesty, when it arrives at the right moment, can be louder than any scream. So here's what I learned, what I'll never forget. If someone can only shine when you are burning, they don't love you. And if you keep supporting someone who betrays you, you don't save them. You only lose yourself. The real revenge isn't hurting them. The real revenge is stepping away and letting them stand on the truth they built. Or fall on it. Either way, it's finally not your job anymore.